Yeah. Okay, good morning. Good morning to everyone online as well. We are so excited today to have Dr. Suzanne Koven with us for our third annual Women in Medicine Day. We have up here a list of some of the events that we've been having this month, and I wanted to give a special thanks to Dr. Sylvia Choi, our Vice Chair of Faculty Affairs, for all that she is doing for women faculty and clinicians, including the Women in Medicine Science symposium that already happened, as well as co-leading the promotion and academics series that we've been having that's been very well attended. So 2 more left. If you have time to come on the 24th and the 30th, please join us. First, we'd like to start by giving our second annual Advancing Women in Medicine Award, and Dr. Choi is here to do that for us right now.
All right, good morning. The Department of Pediatrics is committed to leadership in pediatric healthcare, education, and discovery. Ensuring that we recruit, train, and retain the best people to provide world-class care for our children is key to our mission. Our success depends upon our ability to create an environment in which all of our faculty, staff, and trainees are valued and empowered to thrive, and our female colleagues merit special consideration. The Advancing Women in Pediatric Medicine and Science Award celebrates individuals who demonstrate exceptional dedication to issues that affect women in pediatric medicine within the University of Pittsburgh School of Medicine's Department of Pediatrics. I am thrilled to announce the second recipient this year is Dr. Anna Wang Erickson. I will share her nomination, which summarizes why she is most deserving of this recognition. Dr. Anna Wang Erickson has championed the advancement of women in pediatric medicine and science since joining the department in 2019. She immediately began working on increasing dependent care support, an issue that continues to disproportionately affect the professional development of women in science and medicine. When a pediatric fellow told Anna she didn't know where to express breast milk in Rangos and was afraid to ask, Anna spoke with a dozen women in the department about their experiences and presented the findings to departmental leadership, which resulted in a new dedicated lactation space on the 7th floor. In 2020, she was awarded a Pitt Seed grant to alleviate dependent care costs incurred by faculty and staff, mostly women, when attending conferences and professional meetings. When she discovered that Pitt's financial policies prohibited people from using extramural grant funds awarded specifically for dependent care, she tirelessly pursued policy change, working across the university, including the CFO, provost, human resources, grant and finance administrators, and leaders in the School of Medicine and Dietrich School of Arts and Sciences. Anna chaired the Faculty Senate Ad Hoc Committee on Dependent Care from 2021 to 2023, which achieved a policy change that allows faculty and staff to use grant funds for dependent care according to grant regulations. Dr. Darlene Zellers, the Associate Vice Chair for Academic Career Development, reported that many NIH, NERSA, pre- and postdoc fellows now claim the $2,500 child care supplements the university was previously prohibiting. Since 2022, Anna has served on the University Expense Policy Committee to work on policy change that would formally codify reimbursements for dependent care. Anna also served on the HR Committee in 2021 that established the new Care.com fringe benefit that gives everyone 10 days of backup care for children and adults, which again disproportionately affects women. For all this and more, Dr. Anna Wang Erickson truly deserves the Advancing Women in Pediatric Medicine and Science Award. Please join me in congratulating her.
All right, congratulations. Dr. Suzanne Koven received her BA in English Literature from Yale and her MD from Johns Hopkins, and holds an MFA in nonfiction from the Bennington Writing Seminars. After her residency training and chief residency in medicine at Johns Hopkins, she joined the faculty at Harvard Medical School and practiced primary care internal medicine at Mass General for over 30 years. She's an associate professor of medicine and global health and social medicine at Harvard Medical School and holds the Valerie Winchester Family Endowed Chair in Primary Care Medicine at Mass General. In 2019, she was named the inaugural writer in residence at Mass General. Her essays, articles, blogs, and reviews have appeared in the Boston Globe, the New England Journal, the Lancet, New Yorker, Psychology Today, and many more publications. Her monthly column, In Practice, appeared in the Boston Globe and won the Will Salamine Award for Excellence in Medical Writing from the American Medical Writers Association. Dr. Koven co-directs the Media Medicine program at Harvard Medical School and speaks to a wide variety of audiences on literature and women in medicine, both of which she will speak to us about today. Her New England Journal essay, Letter to a Young Female Physician, went viral. And in fact, one of our new junior faculty had sent it on the first day of her internship here several years ago to all of her classmates. That essay collection, Letter to a Young Female Physician, was published in 2021. I read it. It was fantastic. I'm almost done. I have a few more chapters. And it really is a great lived experience with much humor and humility. Her memoir, The Mirror Box, will be published in 2026. With no further ado, Dr. Suzanne Koven.
So just, excuse me. Okay. Here we go. Well, hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay? We're good. Okay. Well, I've never been to Pittsburgh before. I spent a lovely day yesterday and met the nicest people, and I saw art and I saw orchids. But I ate this sandwich. I don't know, guys. I don't know. I just can't. Okay. Anyway, I'm asked all the time, how did you combine your two careers, writer and doctor? And the answer I give is somewhat glib, but it's absolutely true, which is that I don't see them as different, because writing is obviously rooted in storytelling, and medicine is rooted in storytelling. That's something I talk about a lot. I'll be talking about it in my other sessions today. That is not my topic today, this morning. But I'd like to begin with a story. And then as the story unfolds, I think you'll see it's a story that needs to be changed. So the story begins for me in a conference room at Mass General in late June of 2016. I was asked to participate in an orientation exercise for incoming medical interns. Oh, and they were sitting around the table. They had their Patagonia fleeces on, even though it was a hot day. And as I looked around, I thought, wow, there's more women than men. How about that? How about that? And then, since the exercise was write a letter to your future self being January, at which point they'd bus them all to a resort on Cape Cod and hand them their letters back. And they'd be like, wow, look how far I've come from July, to January. And I did the math and I realized I had started my internship 30 years earlier, almost to the day. And I thought, what would I tell that person now? Well, if you're a writer, every thought you have like that is material. So I wrote, and I sent it to the New England Journal. And Noelle said it went viral. That was much to my surprise. After I wrote it, it was a very personal piece. I tend to write very personally. I thought, well, there's probably like 9 young female physicians who will be interested in this, but that's okay. Except I got mail from all over the world, from young female physicians and also from not young, not female, not physician people. And so it seems to have struck a chord. It led to an essay collection by the same name. And much of what I'm going to say today emerges from the response I got to that essay collection. It was published during COVID. Note to self, first-time authors, don't publish your first book during a global pandemic. I did about 150 Zoom events all over the country and in the Anglophone world. And here's what surprised me. I thought that my experience as a young female physician back in the 80s would be of historical interest. I thought the response I would get from the many groups of young female physicians I spoke to, a kind of like, okay, boomer, must have been bad back then when you had to write your own maternity leave policy, must have been bad. But that isn't the response I got. The response I got in session after session was, it's not like that, but it's not good. And that got me very curious about what's going on for women in medicine today. Now, I'm going to be using the words women and female. I'm referring to people who identify as such. I will not be addressing the experience of non-binary people, but non-binary people, as well as people of color, other members of the LGBTQ community, and others who are marginalized, I think, have somewhat parallel experiences to the kinds of things I'm going to be talking about. And of course, many people have overlapping experiences. In fact, some of the most moving mail I received after the publication of that first essay was from women of color in medicine. And I'll get to that in a moment. Okay, so what did I say to that person 30 years earlier? Well, I said, okay, first I got some bad news. It's 2017, and women in medicine are still earning $20,000 less on average than our male counterparts for equal work. We're underrepresented in leadership positions, even in OB/GYN and pediatrics. We're subject to harassment ranging from mild to severe, sometimes so severe it causes us to leave the profession altogether. But I had something a little more personal to say too, which was, maybe don't spend the next few decades thinking that you're not good enough. I did that. It was not a very fruitful use of my time. This feeling that you're a fraud, this feeling that at every grand rounds, at every bedside, at every res report, you're the one who doesn't quite measure up. And it's only a matter of time before you get found out. This even leached into my attending years, where I used to think, thank God the longest month is 31 days. Because if it was 32 days, I will have run the gamut of my knowledge. And then they'll find out I actually don't know anything. Now, what I suffered from has a name, but I didn't know this when I first suffered from it in medical school. It's called imposter syndrome or imposter phenomenon. It was described by a couple of psychologists, oh my goodness, by a couple of psychologists in the 70s. It was described as occurring in high-achieving women. We now know, of course, that men experience it too. And it comes in lots of different flavors. I've described that feeling that, it's like that old Sesame Street song, one of these things is not like the other. One of these things just doesn't belong. But I should say, before I go on a little bit about that recently it's been challenged, including by by Leslie Jameson in this essay in the New Yorker last year. And her conclusion is very much the conclusion I came to, particularly after hearing responses to my essay and my book, which is so much of imposter syndrome is internalized bias. This isn't a problem you have. This is a problem society has, and you are collateral damage. And that's what I learned when women of color in medicine wrote me and said, well, you're damn right, I feel like an imposter. I get told I am one in large and small ways every single day. Why wouldn't I begin to wonder if I belong here? But anyway, when I was in medical school, I had never heard the term imposter syndrome, but my best friend Debbie and I called ourselves the asterisks. As in, we got into Johns Hopkins asterisk, but there weren't that many applicants to medical school that year, clearly. And, the asterisk syndrome is a lot of what this looks like. Yeah, I matched at that fancy, pediatrics residency in Pittsburgh. I think I snowed them at the interview. I think the person who wrote me the letters, and for some reason, they just like me a lot. But it can't be because I know anything, because I don't know anything, and it's only a matter of time before people figure out that I don't know anything and that I'm going to be killing children. Another way to look at this was in this sort of lovely graphic, literally written on a napkin in the New York Times. There was a piece about this. And it's an overlap between something is easy for you, therefore it's not worth anything, right? It's like the old Groucho Marx joke, I would never join a club that would have me as a member. And I see this in women all the time. Oh, they say I'm good with patients, but isn't everybody? No. Ask your patients. I mean, yeah, I'm nice, but like everybody's nice. No, they're not. Okay. So how did I finally, after many, many years, got rid of my imposter syndrome. How did I do it? That's a story for another time, but I'll tell you how I didn't do it. I didn't do it by collecting brass rings. Well, if I just get into this school, I won't feel this way anymore. And if I just get into this program, I won't feel this way anymore. And if I just get this award, I won't feel this anymore. If I just marry this person, if I just have this house, if I just have this income, if I just lose this weight, I won't feel this way anymore, except you cannot solve an internal problem with an external fix. And if you don't believe me, ask these people. These are all people who you will recognize who have talked openly about their own imposter syndrome. All I can say is that if Serena Williams is an imposter, I mean, let's just give up now and go have coffee. Okay, so winning stuff, earning stuff, getting shinier is not a way to fix your imposter syndrome. Okay, so just set that aside for a moment, and I'll just say that I did get over it, but it kind of nagged at me. And then in 2011, I was well into my career at this point, this New York Times editorial really got to me. It was by a female anesthesiologist whose thesis was, if you are a female physician who works part-time, as I was then, You are doing a disservice to your colleagues, you're doing a disservice to your patients, and you're doing a disservice to the funders of your medical education. The illustration, by the way, is a veritable Dr. Barbie who is vacuuming with her stethoscope with the kids in the background. This torqued me off. So much so that I wrote a counter editorial in the Boston Globe in which I pointed out that all doctors are part-time doctors and all patients are potentially full-time patients. And that in fact, the fastest growing group of part-timers are older men. Yeah, take that. So anyway, now to our topic for today. So here's a confession. When I wrote that piece and I said, okay, younger self, I got two things to tell you. One, there's still going to be a lot of sexism in 2017 and a lot of lack of gender parity in medicine. And two, imposter syndrome, yeah, don't bother with that. It's a waste of your time. It didn't really occur to me that those things have a lot to do with each other until I got this response that said, you know what? If you are swimming in gender disparity, you are going to be internalizing some of those waters in the same way that if you are swimming in structural racism, that is going to affect you. I mean, how could it not? So I got very interested, as I said, in what's going on with women today in medicine. Well, this is the conclusion I came to. There are more of us. That's the good news. There are more of us. Now, here's the bad news, just about everything else. I promise you this talk is not going to be a complete downer. Okay, so I'm going to show some data, but I'm going to make it unpainful. Okay, so this very conveniently, this is applicants to medical school by gender. It begins very conveniently the year I applied to medical school, in which there was a huge disparity and that gap has narrowed considerably. And in fact, now there are more women than men applying to medical school. As of 2019, there are more women than men in medical school. My son's a fourth year medical student. His class is 60% women. I don't have to tell you that there are residency programs that are female predominant. OBGYN, medical genetics, pediatrics, derm, and internal medicine are the highest. The most male predominant or the least female predominant, most of these will not surprise you, except perhaps radiology. I think that surprises some people. But the surgical subspecialties are still very male predominant. On the faculty in academic medicine, 38% women, but we're stuck. Full professors, 21%. Department chairs across the board, 15%. Deans, I think this figure is slightly old. We might be up to 20%. So, and then I think this is really where the rubber meets the road. This is academic rank over time between 2009 and 2018. This is data from the AMC State of Women in Medicine report. We're just kind of stuck. We're just kind of flatlined and have been for years. Just putting those numbers into some words, women physicians are a quarter less likely to become full professors. We're more than half less likely to be chairs of departments. And going beyond physicians, women, now we're counting nurses and CNAs and MAs, are 75% of the workforce in healthcare, and we hold 32% of the leadership positions. So what we got here is a female predominant profession that is run by men. Now, maybe your argument is, okay, but we just haven't had time to catch up. We've had plenty of time to catch up. And that was, I think, stated very eloquently in this tweet last year by a young female physician who said, in 1993, 42% of entering med students were women. I was 8. We've said this 1,000 times, but where did all those years go? And where are those women now? And why aren't they my bosses? We've had plenty of time, and we're still not running the show, or at least co-equally running the show. Why is that? Lots of reasons. I think a really big reason has to do with childcare. So let's talk about that. Now, obviously, not all women in medicine have kids, but this is a really big factor. And this was a really seminal report put out in Annals of Internal Medicine about 10 years ago that showed that in male-female physician couples, women were doing 11.5 hours weekly more childcare domestic duties than men. Put a different way, the married male physicians were spending 7 more hours a week at work and 12 hours less on parenting and domestic tasks. Well, what happens when you spend more time at work and less time at home? You go to that 7 a.m. meeting, you get on that committee, you publish that paper, you meet that contact, you get that mentor. What happens if you're home? You don't. And that is borne out. Also, in addition, and this really comes up with COVID, in addition, this is that paper I mentioned, in addition to spending more time, women are much more likely to stay home when the kid is sick, or when, say, there's a global pandemic and the kid can't go to school. And women are less likely to have a stay-at-home partner than men. So what does this mean? This has palpable, measurable results. We're less productive was it something I said? Research, we're slower to be promoted. Our salaries are lower. We are less likely to be invited to be Grand Rounds speakers, present company except, less likely to have mentors, et cetera. And then there's harassment. And this ranges from actual physical assault by patients and by colleagues to what I called bro humor. And what we know is that women in medicine are not likely to report these things because medicine values being a team player. And when you complain about anything, including being attacked or insulted, you are not a team player. So what do? You move or you quit. And what about allyship? Well, the problem with male allyship is not that our male allies, our male colleagues aren't wonderful. It's that they're not aware. It's just not part of consciousness. And you see this in racism as well. We saw this after George Floyd, where every hospital, including my own, had these wonderful gatherings where we talked about racism in our own backyard And I attended several where the white people in attendance said, "We are so lucky that doesn't happen to here." And the Black people said, "You are out of your mind," right? So here, perception of respect by gender, to the statement, men are more respected than women are, 2% of men said, yeah, that's true. 98% said, no, that's not true. My organization listens to victims of harassment. Men said, yeah, that happens. Women said, maybe not so much. So there's a perception. And then there's just this soft stuff, this sort of drip, drip, drip. How can I trust a doctor's decision? She paints on her eyebrows. What about your hair? What about your makeup? What about, you'll go get married. Why are you taking another break to pump? Anyone who's ever pumped will tell you it ain't no break. And then, just little stuff like speakers at grand rounds being introduced by first name if they are female. I wasn't. But you see that in the political landscape. One of our candidates is never referred to by his first name, and one of our candidates is always referred to by her first name. That's a thing, right? So now you're thinking, lucky us, we're in pediatrics. None of that happens here. Well, 60 to 70% of American pediatricians are women, but only 20% of pediatric department chairs are women. So you got a female dominant profession that is run by men. Okay. Female pediatricians receive 76 cents on the dollar compared to male colleagues. Why? All kinds of reasons, which we can go into. And this study out of Stanford, I found fascinating. In evaluating pediatric residents, the words used to describe women were enthusiasm and caring, while men had intelligence and were prepared. And then this little anecdote by a pediatric ER doc. So, she's running this big resuscitation post-Fontan. I don't even know what that is, but you do, so that's all that's important. And she stabilizes the patient, and a consultant comes in and asks if she's the charge nurse. And she says, the attending is me, Dr. Amanda Stewart, and I am the ED physician. And in an awkward attempt to rectify his misstep, he gives me a hug. Does this happen every day? Lord, I hope not. But does it happen? Yes. Why? Because you exist in the same culture as everyone else. The pay gap now sits as of 2024 at 29%. Why? It has to do with choice. I know, right? It has to do with choice of specialty. It has to do with taking time off work to deal with kids and elderly parents. It has to do with sexism, as in, I can pay you less. It has to do with doing unremunerated work and all kinds of things. And it got a lot worse during COVID for reasons I've alluded to. All right, here's some really depressing stuff. We lose about 300 to 400 physicians by suicide every year. More of them are women. Women are more likely to die by suicide in medicine than men, and female physicians are more likely to die by suicide than women in general. This is a real crisis. And then I want to move to something that got me personally very interested, which is what about like having babies? Like how does that all work with respect to residency and so forth? The reason that was of interest to me is that I got pregnant when I was an intern, which was probably not a great idea. This was a long time ago, and I did not ask for, nor did I receive any accommodation to my work hours, which were then over 100 hours a week. As a consequence of this, I developed preeclampsia and delivered a 5-pound baby. She has 2 kids of her own now. It all worked out, but this was a life-threatening condition, both for me and for her. And it never occurred to me to say this isn't okay. Never occurred to anyone I worked with to say this isn't okay. And when I went, I tell the story in the book, when I went around the country talking about this, I thought, well, surely that's from the dark ages. But what I learned is that it wasn't, and that having a baby during residency, which coincidentally is around the age when humans have babies. I mean, it would be great to do it in retirement as like a retirement gig, but probably not going to work out. And so I got really interested in what is going on here. And so along with 2 colleagues, I wrote a piece in the New England Journal in which we were pretty horrified at what we found, that in 2023, women were still making the choice between having a healthy pregnancy and staying on track with their medical careers. That was the choice. You couldn't have both. And 3/4 of female physicians will delay childbearing. Related, 1/3 will experience infertility, and 1/2 will pass up opportunities to accommodate family life because they're afraid they will fall off the track or be considered a whiner or a complainer or high maintenance, including, I heard some wonderful news alluded to about, with our awardee today, about breastfeeding, except these accommodations, whether it's a maternity leave or a breastfeeding room or pumping room and so forth, are still seen as favors, are still seen as accommodations. They're not accommodations. It's not an accommodation that you got a bathroom over there. It's a human need that you are providing for your human staff. It ain't a favor that you have a bathroom, and it shouldn't be a favor that you have a pumping room. So, okay. So, given all that I've said, is it any wonder that women are leaving medicine? When I read this statistic, and this is pre-COVID from Michigan, 40% of women work part-time or leave altogether within 6 years of residency. I thought, now that can't be true. I don't know what they're doing up in Michigan, but that can't be true. And then I started thinking about the women I knew. And I thought, oh yeah, that one, that one, that one. Yes, it's true. And surprise, surprise, women are more likely to be burned out for all the reasons we've said. Oh, and guess what are the most burned out specialties? The specialties that have the most women. Now, why does this matter? Like, we're still pretty highly paid, privileged professionals. Like, wah, who cares about us? The problem is that lack of gender parity in medicine has effects not only on us, but on everybody, especially our patients. So how does that work? Well, first, economically, it is really expensive to have people quitting medicine and then have to replace them. I mean, just in dollars and cents. And then this may surprise some of you, but then if you start thinking about your experience and those of your colleagues, most women in medicine are the primary breadwinners of their families. If they are being underpaid, this is affecting a whole family, a whole community, a whole tax base, if you will. It matters economically. And then now I'm going to get into some thorny territory. Some people say, to quote that infelicitous phrase, that women may be better doctors than men. I don't believe that, but let's look at some outcomes. Well, this was the big Medicare study that showed that if your PCP was a woman, you were more likely to survive and not bounce back to the hospital within 30 days of discharge, which of course the New York Times, should you choose a female doctor? We know that there's some data that shows that female surgeons have better outcomes. And why would that be? Is it that women are smarter and better and work harder than men? I don't believe that. Most of my doctors have been men. Some of my favorite husbands are male doctors. And I don't believe that. But I think the answer underneath that data may lie in what I'm about to show you, which is that it seems that women spend a little more time with patients than men do, even if it costs them income. So this was a study from the Brigham where it showed that primary care doctors spent 2.4 extra minutes per patient per visit. When I first saw this, I thought 2.4 minutes, I mean, that's barely enough to hang a coat up. What's that? But if you're being paid on productivity, as I was for most of my career, and that is amortized over a year, guess what it adds up to? A 15% pay gap. So I asked the authors of this paper, what are we talking about for 2.4 minutes? And they said, well, we're spending more time explaining tests and diagnoses, but we're also more likely to ask to see the prom pictures. Oh, by the way, female physicians also spend 25% more time unremunerated on the electronic medical record at night compared to our male colleagues, and we get 25% more messages. Do we get more messages because we answer them, or do we answer them because we get more messages? I don't know. But related, women are more likely to be effective in lifestyle counseling. Why? Because it takes more time and we're spending more time. So what is that all about? Is it because we're nicer? I don't believe that. Let me tell you what I think it's about. I wrote a piece about this in the New England Journal a while back. I called it the doctor's new dilemma, and this is what it looks like. And we've all been at this particular crossroads. Here's what it looks like. You walk into a room, the patient is waiting for you. Well, in my practice, they're reading a novel. In your practice, the parent's reading a novel. You see the cover of the novel. You've read it. You have opinions about it. And now you have a choice. Do you say, oh, my book group read that. What'd you think of it? And then you have a conversation which will be mutually fulfilling and bonding. We know that bonding with your primary care doctor, by the way, has effects on things like hemoglobin A1C. It's not just like fluffy nice. But if you do that, you will lose income. If you're being paid on productivity, you will fall behind, which will make you incredibly stressed out and ultimately maybe burned out. That's choice number one. What's choice number two? You pretend you don't see the cover of the book and you go about your business, in which case you have an existential crisis in which you ask yourself, what am I even doing here? If the whole point is not to engage my patient, but to get through the day, why am I even here? So you engage and you get burned out, or you don't engage and you get burned out. Okay, so what I think, and obviously this is very, very general and, you know, don't, as the kids say, don't at me. I think that women are acculturated to ask to see the prom pictures, to ask about the novel, even if it costs us time and income. And men are acculturated not to. But here's the thing, we both lose because we lose time and income and they lose the deep joy and satisfaction of taking the time to engage. These are huge generalities, but I stand by them. Okay. So in summary, we got a lot of policies we need to change around recruitment, retention, promotion, research funding, mentorship, family leave, childcare, physician mental health, harassment, pay equity. But there's a story we need to change too. Abraham Verghese and colleague wrote a wonderful piece in the New England Journal a couple of years ago in which he asked why, if we are becoming a female predominant profession, is our culture still so male dominated? Why? Well, I think it's because our society is still so male dominated. You know, that's the answer. But I just want to give you a couple of brief examples of how we might begin to chip away at this. These are secondary to the structural, policy changes. And this is not going to be a bottom-up thing. The only thing that is going to save us is to get women in positions of power and influence. I truly believe that. But these are a couple of examples of where we can chip away at the culture. Social media, I know it's horrible, right? But it can be used for some good things. Like, for example, there was a hashtag on what used to be, you know, that site, of a New Yorker cover with 4 female surgeons. And female surgeons all over the world reproduced it and tweeted it out. That was great. Looks like a surgeon. Here was another one. Anyone here remember hashtag #MedBikini? Well, for those of you who don't, here's what happened. The Journal of Vascular Surgery, I think it was, they did a research article, which appeared online, never made it to print because it was retracted, in which they did a very valuable study. What they did was they surveyed the private social media accounts of residents, and horrors, they noticed some very unprofessional behavior, including stating positions about abortion and guns, and wearing bikinis on vacation. So a 4th-year medical student decided that there should be a campaign, hashtag #MedBikini, in which women and men in medicine should tweet out pictures of themselves in swimwear. And what she was getting at was another sort of bugaboo I have, and which I think she would have agreed with, which is this idea that professionalism is often a code word for we don't really like the way you look, i.e., we would rather you were a white man wearing a bow tie. Not that that's a bad look. I love that look, but it's not everybody's look. So if you have, natural hair, if you have big earrings, well, that's not professional. Who says? Who says? I mean, that's what a lot of our patients look like. Who says? My favorite entry in the hashtag #MedBikini was this emergency medicine doc in Hawaii who was saving the victim of a boating accident in her red bikini. Well, she looked like a doctor. I want to leave time for some comments, so I'm going to skip through here to the end and just say that ultimately, this is a conversation we need to have nationally, we need to have in conference rooms, but we also need to have with each other. I hoped my book sparked it. There's an after-school program in Atlanta where little girls dress up like doctors. I rather hoped that the current trainees would be experiencing gender parity in medicine. I really hope that these little girls experience it in 20 and 30 years. But we are going to have to work for it, and we can't be complacent about it, even in pediatrics. So I'll end it there.